and thanks for joining this session on modernizing Microsoft workloads on AWS. My name's Andy Ward, and with me today are my colleagues Baris Furtinalar and Prasad Rao. Say hi, guys.
Hi.
Hello.
Okay, thanks, guys. So we're all specialist solutions architects here at AWS, and we focus on Microsoft workloads, which is why we're going to be talking about modernizing Microsoft workloads on AWS with you today. You would have heard on the previous video, and you should check it out if you haven't already, that AWS has 16 years of experience running Microsoft workloads in the cloud. And the three of us joining you on this video have over 75 years of experience working with Microsoft workloads.
And it feels like I've had 75 years of experience listening Andy giving introductions.
Yeah, thanks, Duj.
So Andy and I will kick off the session by talking briefly about some of the optimal ways of migrating your Microsoft workloads to AWS. Before handing it over to Prasad, who will take us all through some of the ways that we can modernize Microsoft workloads and run them in the most efficient way on AWS.
Yep, and I'm going to keep asking questions throughout while trying not to annoy anyone. So does it sound good, guys?
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Perfect. So at AWS, we do our best to help our customers, regardless of their level of expertise or how far they are along their cloud journey. And so when it comes to Microsoft workloads, we typically see three main transformations along the journey to running Microsoft workloads in the most optimized manner.
Yeah, that's right. So customers typically have two pathways towards workload modernization: on-premises to modern architectures, or on-premises to modern infrastructure first, and then onwards to modern architecture.
Nice. So I mentioned three main transformations that can take place, and can you take us through them?
Of course. So we have customers typically going through three phases. First, rehost, moving infrastructure from on-premises to AWS. And we often refer to this as lift and shift because there is no need for code changes, as you're simply migrating existing applications and databases to cloud instances.
That sounds nice and simple. So how might a customer actually go about performing a simple lift and shift or a rehost?
Yeah, so the easiest way to do this, and one used very often by our customers, such as 3M, is to use AWS Application Migration Service, MGN. MGN copies your servers to AWS by setting up a replication server in your AWS account. You install an agent which takes snapshots of the original server and sends those copies to AWS server bit by bit. This copies everything over without slowing down or stopping your original server. Once all the data is copied over, MGN can launch the AWS copy of the server whenever you're ready. MGN can also perform agentless snapshot replication from a vCenter source environment.
Yep. Yeah, so MGN is extremely awesome and it's easy to use. Are there any other ways that we help customers during this phase, Baris?
Yeah, well, we offer a number of programs that help, but the key program is our Optimization and Licensing Assessment, or OLA. And OLA empowers both new and existing customers to assess and optimize their on-premises and cloud environments, reduce the required number and size of instances, and enhance resource efficiency.
Right. So that's when we're analyzing your actual current resource usage, your third-party licensing, and your application dependencies with an AWS OLA. So the data gathered will help you make informed decisions for your cloud journey, and we can deliver a comprehensive report that models your deployment options based on actual resource use and your existing licensing entitlements. And that helps you uncover potential cost savings in various different ways, including flexible licensing options. Once you've migrated your workloads to AWS, the optimization journey just gets easier.
Yeah, exactly. So we have a comprehensive Microsoft on AWS cost optimization guide written and maintained by ourselves and our solutions architect colleagues, which can really help to educate our customers on techniques to optimize Microsoft workloads. And we have some really easy to use tooling available within AWS to help optimize resource usage.
Yeah, and my favorite one of our tools in this area is the AWS Compute Optimizer. And what that does is it looks at your existing workloads and it provides recommendations about what you can do to ensure that your workloads are running efficiently. So that's things like changing your EC2 instance to a smaller size or a different, more appropriate type. And these recommendations are based on real metrics like CPU, RAM, and storage. So this is the first of our three transformations, an optimized rehost, lift and shift, move and improve. What's the second transformation, Baris?
That will be replatforming, Andy. Once you are in a cloud environment, the next transformation is around replatforming the application and databases in a more automated and managed environment. From an application perspective, that means moving from virtual machines to containers. Containerizing applications will help you develop, maintain, and deploy applications faster, and it improves portability. AWS has tools like App2Container to help automate the process of containerizing legacy applications. On the database side, moving from a self-managed model to a fully managed database service like RDS for SQL Server will eliminate the need to do activities such as provisioning, configuring high availability, patching, updates, backups, and ultimately freeing up resources for more value-added activities.
Great stuff, Baris. So for our third pathway, it's time to bring in our modernization heavy hitter, Prasad. So, Prasad, what are we talking about when we say Microsoft modernization?
Sure. Thanks, Andy. So, as Baris mentioned, we first do the first two level of transformations, which is rehost and then replatform. And you have an optimized way of actually having your Microsoft workloads on AWS, but you should not be stopping here. You can actually go a step further and modernize them to eliminate your Microsoft licenses. That will further help you save your cost and also bring the agility in your whole development processes, right? So when we talk about Microsoft workloads, let's look into it in two categories. First is the application, which is your .NET applications. Now, traditionally, legacy .NET applications, which is .NET Framework, .NET was released in 2002, which was proprietary and could run only on Windows. So all your .NET Framework applications can run only on Windows. But in 2016, an open source version of .NET came, which we call as .NET Core. And that is cross-platform, so you can run it on Linux. So when you talk about modernizing .NET applications, we mean that modernizing your .NET Framework applications, which can run only on Windows, to the latest version of .NET that can run on Linux.
Great stuff, Prasad. So do we have any tooling or services that can help our customers with this modernization?
Yes, we do have a number of toolings that helps our customers modernize their .NET applications. So there are two parts to modernization. First is porting your legacy code base to the latest version of .NET. And second, most of the times these legacy applications are monolithic applications. So you might want to modernize them by splitting them into microservices. So we have tools for both of them. So the first tool to port is known as Porting Assistant for .NET, which we'll see the demo in a moment. And the second tool, Microservice Extractor for .NET, helps you modernize your monolithic applications into microservices. So let's have a quick look at Porting Assistant for .NET and how it helps you to upgrade your .NET Framework application to your latest version of .NET. So Porting Assistant for .NET is a standalone desktop tool that you can install on your Windows desktop. All it needs is access to your source code locally. So this is the home screen that you are looking into when you're install Porting Assistant for .NET, and you can get started here. And if you see this assess a solution, I've assessed a couple of solutions, but if you want to assess a new solution, all you need to do is provide the solution file, and then you will be able to assess the solution, and you just need the source code locally.
Cool. So I can see two solutions on this page that we're looking at right now. What's the difference between these, and what are some of those columns mean, like ported projects and so on?
Yes, so when you assess solutions, this is an overview page which shows all the solutions that have been assessed for your compatibility with the latest version of .NET. So as you can see, there are two. One is Knob Commerce, which is a more real-life project. It's an open source e-commerce application built in .NET. And the second one is a Porting Assistant demo, a demo application that we built to showcase. If you see the more real-life one, Knob Commerce, it has 35 projects, out of which 0 are ported. That's what the first column shows. The second column, incompatible packages, shows that in this overall solution, there are 56 packages that have been used. Out of it, 47 are incompatible with the latest version of .NET. So that's where you will have to upgrade these packages or use alternate packages so that they are compatible with latest version of .NET. Similarly, with incompatible APIs, in total, this whole solution, Knob Commerce, uses 2721 APIs, out of which 571 are incompatible. The solution is buildable, so there is no build error. Porting actions, and this is important. These are the number of actions you need to take to make this whole solution entirely compatible with latest version of .NET.
Cool. So why don't we have a little dive deep into that more complex looking one?
Yes, we will. So we can drill down into it a bit more. The first tab, the assessment overview, shows the same information in a more graphical manner. But when we scroll down, we see multiple tabs, and that's where we can drill down. So as we can see, the 35 projects. And if we want to look into the stats at each of the project level, that's what this table shows. Like, for example, knob.web. The current framework version is .NET 4.5.1, which is the framework version, and that can run only on Windows. It has 4 reference projects. It uses 38 packages, out of which 34 are incompatible. 568 APIs, out of which 134 are incompatible, and in total there are 237 porting actions. So you will be able to look into, and you can sort them based on whichever parameter you would like. For example, these where you can see 0 porting actions. So when you will port them, like we have this option port project here, you can select a specific project and you can port it. These will be automatically ported without any changes required. For the rest, there might be some porting actions that will be done automatically for you, and some you have to do manually. And to dive deep more, we have project references. So it's very important actually to understand how the different projects depend on each other so that you can plan. So all this information is really useful at an assessment stage. So you don't have to scan the entire code base to come up with an estimate about how much it would take or how much effort it would take to modernize it end to end. The dependencies and this information will help you actually not only estimate, but also plan in which order you should be modernizing it. For example, if you start with knob.core, then it shows that there are these many projects that are dependent on it. So you have to modernize all of them. So based on your strategy, you can think about going outside in or inside out. So all these tabs, they provide good amount of drill down information for you to make an informed decision about how much effort it would take you to undertake this entire modernization project. And when you are ready, there is a way you can actually go ahead and change those files.
Cool. Sounds good. So one thing I can see when now you go back to this homepage is at the top of the screen, there's also an info box that's mentioning something about Visual Studio. So what's that about?
Yeah. So as I said, we have multiple tools. Porting Assistant for .NET is a standalone tool. But then we also have Visual Studio extension, which is known as AWS Toolkit for .NET Refactoring. So Porting Assistant tool is good when you look for visualization and understanding it at the assessment stage. But when you're actually doing the code changes, when developers are making those changes, they might want to stay in their favorite developer environment, which is Visual Studio, and they need not have to do that back and forth between the standalone tool and the developer environment. So they can, all these information that is present here is also present within the Visual Studio through this extension, so that they can look into those changes there itself, port the changes from within the Visual Studio, and do any manual changes on top of it within the developer environment itself.
Oh, good stuff. So other than this, is there anything we can do to help out developers with their coding productivity?
Oh yes, when we talk about productivity, we do have Code Whisperer that helps customers generate the code based on the prompt that they will provide. And then later this year, it's coming is Amazon Q code transformation that will help actually use Gen AI to modernize your .NET framework applications to latest versions of .NET.
Amazing. Cool. So you mentioned database modernization earlier too, when we first started talking about modernizing Microsoft workloads. Is there anything we can do to help our customers there?
Yes. So we do have tools even for database modernization. And when we talk about database modernization, customers might be having SQL Server databases, and they would like to get away from the Microsoft licensing, the SQL Server licensing. And for that, we have seen customers like Expedia, Dow Jones, ASP modernizing their SQL Server databases to Amazon Aurora, whether it is MySQL or PostgreSQL engine, but that helps them free from their SQL Server licensing.
Cool. And just so we're clear, when we say database modernization, what are we really talking about exactly?
Yeah, so gone are the days when we used to use relational database for every use case. Now, it depending upon the application and the specific use case of that application, we have purpose-built databases to choose from. We have key value database, we have wide column database, we have time stream database, we have document database. So it depends upon the use case to use case. We will be able to use a specific database.
Nice. Cool. So, I mean, in terms of this modernization stuff, I'm very familiar with pricing up and designing, standard Microsoft architectures on AWS using things like EC2 and RDS. But how would I go about estimating the cost and designing an architecture pattern for a modernized workload on AWS?
Yeah, and that's a common, feedback that we hear from our customers too, that when they are, let's say, migrating their workloads onto AWS, it's easy for them to visualize. So let's say if they have an application running on a Windows server, all right, and if there are 100 Windows servers and they're migrating those 100 Windows servers onto AWS EC2 Windows, it's easy for them to understand that. But if they're modernizing, right, and that's where it might be a bit more difficult for them to visualize what the target architecture would look like and how it would cost them, because they might not have experience working with AWS serverless services or AWS container services, right? So they might not have heard about or have experience working with AWS Lambda or step functions, Cognito. And that's where we can help them. And we have released re:Invent 2022 AWS Modernization Calculator for Microsoft workloads. I'm sure everyone be using pricing calculator day in and day out.
Yeah, I know I do.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah. So let me show a quick demo out how AWS Modernization Calculator for Microsoft workloads work. It helps you estimate for a specific architecture pattern, right? So let's say if you have an app and that app might be on an on-prem or AWS or any other cloud platform, it provides you with few architecture categories. It can be a multi-tier application or it can be a batch processing use case. Or in terms of a use case, it can be your software development where you have your full CI/CD pipeline, or a container, or you can create your own custom use case. And based on the architecture pattern, we do provide suggestions on the target architecture. So Andy, do you have any specific preference on which architecture pattern we should be looking into?
Yeah, well, I'll just base it on the thing I see customers using most often, and the thing I'm talking about most often, which is that kind of 3-tier or multi-tier web application with a database on the back end. So let's use that as our use case, I think.
Yeah, that's actually true. Most common thing that we see, right? We have the 3-tier web application. So if you have a multi-tier application and you want to see how it's going to look like in AWS after modernization. So when you click on next, first it asks for a few more information so that it can come up with some suggestions. First is, what is the usage pattern of your application? So let's say it's a weekly spike. How many end users the application has? Let's say 10,000 users, right? How much data are we storing in production environment? Depending upon what information you have, you can fill this information. It's optional, but based on that, it will be coming up with a recommended sizing. And when we click on next, that's where it is able to, based on the architecture that we selected. So we selected a multi-tier architecture, right? It is able to come up with few suggestions about how the target architecture would look like on AWS when you're using AWS serverless functions or AWS containers. And that can be your Amazon EKS or it can be your Amazon ECS, right? And it provides more information. So if you click on learn more for each of these architectures, it provides about the brief description, all the services that are used in specific architecture and why, multi-tier architecture is designed in this particular manner on AWS. And it also provides you with implementation details about how you can go. So customers can actually read through this information and then make an informed decision about which direction they would like to go. Again, it's a very high-level ballpark architecture. They will have to do a more deep dive on their specific environment and come up with a target architecture, but this is a good starting point for them.
Cool. Well, I feel like I'm a very good speed reader, so I read all of that architecture guidance there, and I want to go with Lambda. So let's have a look at what we saw there and what we can see with Lambda.
So let's go for serverless. And when we click on next, this is where it is able to provide you with an estimate. about what it would cost you if you implement this architecture based on the sizing it's recommended, right? And it's all customizable. You can add up more service and you can remove a specific service. Like for example, Incognito, at this point, it says the service settings, the number of monthly active users is 1875. And if you want to change it, you think if you have more, just change it. And accordingly, it will change the prices. If you think you don't want to use Cognito, delete the service. So it's going to help you come up with a ballpark estimate. And then what happens is that now you'll be able to calculate the ROI. You know how much it costs you your current workloads. This is a ballpark estimate of when you modernize your target architecture would look like and how much it's going to cost. So you can think about, what's the break even or what's the ROI, and create a good business case to get the buy-in from your stakeholders to take up the modernization project.
Awesome stuff, Prasad. Thank you very much. So yeah, I think we've pretty much covered the three main transformations that are going to help you on your journey towards an optimal modernized infrastructure. And we really hope that this session's been useful. And please do get in contact with your AWS account teams if any of this has piqued your interest and you'd like to go into more detail. And please like and subscribe. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you all.